Hi, friends. As I mentioned in my January favorites, I promised to dive into the 10 color palette again, as well as make several comparisons with the several Dior highlighters that I have in my collection. If you were wondering about them, so here we go. Again, this is the Diorshow 10 color palette. I'm not going to say that in French. Eyeshadow palette 001, the Mitzah edition. When you see it first, you're like, really? That's so bland. I don't think so. Maybe you weren't thinking that. Maybe you were the same as me and were captivated by these shades right here. Alongside this palette, I also did purchase 2 of the Dior Forever Couture Luminizers. One that I bought last year and I held back at that time because when these released, boy, were they show-stopping. I originally bought Nude Glow, which is what I have on here with Coral Glow. And to remind you, Nude Glow is more of like that champagne leaning highlighter, Golden Glow, more golden. But what I really wanted was the Coral Glow. And that's what I have on lower on the cheeks here. My goodness, one of the most beautiful coral highlighters, but I have a few notes here. So before we get into the 10 color palette swatches, I wanted to make these comparisons with the Dior highlighters. So first up is the Diorskin Nude Luminizer 03 Gold. This is one of my first Dior highlighters. Actually, I gave 2 away that came in the original all plastic metal packaging, or it was all metal. I don't actually know what material it was, but it was a heavier compact, a little more luxurious feeling than what they switched to with the half and half compact here. But Nude Glow is one of my go-to highlighters, perfectly golden without appearing too warm on the higher parts of my cheekbones. And the subtlety of it with Dior highlighters is it does emulate that soft focused look on the skin with a good amount of shine, a perfect balance, I think, of shine and texture, where the powders are finely milled, silky on the blend, where it doesn't latch onto texture, especially if you do struggle with that when it comes to powder highlighters, where one might gravitate toward a cream or liquid product because that will blend better into the skin. Ways you can mitigate powderiness in using one of these highlighters is to set your face first and then apply the powder on your cheekbones. The moisture will help melt the powders better into your skin. So if you do struggle with something looking artificial or it not blending well, you could take that step. Next up, we have 2 limited edition highlighters. I know, shame on me for showing these, but in case if you were wondering, these were from the summer collection. If I could recollect, 2019 maybe? The Summer Dune highlighters. First we have 001 Pink Dune, which is a more soft pink opalescent finish on the skin, and 002 Peach Dune, which is, as you see, more peachier in hue. And I immediately thought of this one when I wanted Coral Glow because they do remind me of each other. But Peach Dune definitely has more of a coral, like warmer leaning vibe to it than Coral Glow. So again, here is Peach Dune, and don't you just adore the compact? Like, I cannot. It has a similar texture as the Dior Forever, and with Coral Glow from the Forever line next to Summer Dune. So you can see Peach Dune definitely more peachy in undertone. Coral Glow leans more warm pink, and that's what I have here on the cheeks, higher parts of them, but it still reads more like golden on the reflect. I still want it. So they are similar. I'm sure, like I had argued in my Charlotte Tilbury highlighter video, that when on the face, you can't tell whether I have Coral Glow or Peach Dune, or excuse me, Yes, I was correct. Peach Dune. Memory is working, my goodness. Now going into the Dior Forever Couture Luminizer lineup. 06 Coral Glow, again, more pink in undertone. 01 Nude Glow is the more champagne leaning, and the one I usually place on the cheekbones, the higher parts of them for that high reflectivity. And 04 was a mistake. I also mentioned this in my favorites video where I thought I was buying Coral Glow, and because the compact or the color of the powder looked very warm, and I don't know why my brain computed that as coral. So here is Golden Glow and here is Coral Glow. So when I saw this, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Coral Glow. It definitely is not when you see them together clearly, but again, I just processed that color as coral from how it looked in pan, and clearly it's not. So this definitely is more golden, but I love the undertone. It's actually like a peachy golden shade. I adore it, and I place that from low to high. This is a color I could get away with, even though it's warmer leaning. It doesn't look or doesn't give me shading when I turn my head forward, when I look side. It just has like this golden blaze on my cheekbones. Is absolutely perfect. And I would say perhaps the slight difference between the Dior Forever and the Nude Luminizer, or just the Luminizer formula, maybe the Luminizer is a touch smoother. I just detect a little more slip. Yeah, so this formula I do think has more shine. 100%. Maybe people prefer the Forever formula for being a little more low-key, you know what I mean? But if you like that shine, you're gonna get it from the Luminizer formula. And to quickly show you, again, this is 03. Okay, now how do these compare to the Diorshow, or excuse me, the Dior Backstage palettes? I have all four. This was the second that released. What happened to, here it is. No, I'm a liar. This is Rose Gold, one of the three that released all together. The original Backstage highlighter palette is in 001 Universal. Amazing formula. The packaging, sure, not as luxe as the Forever with like this quilted thing going on, nor is it as luxe looking as the Forever lineup, or excuse me, Luminizer highlight. So many names. However, you have beautiful texture, smooth blend from the Backstage formula. It is extraordinary. And what I'll also add is just a little more versatility here. You got 4 shades in one palette. You can mix and match. You can even use this bronzier shade depending on where your skin tone sits. Could use it as a highlighter bronzer, which I think people have been experimenting with and liking. Just because something has a little pearl in it doesn't mean you can't place it on the hollows. Typically, we would use a matte finish or even satin finish powder for sculpting and or bronzing. But nice that we have that option. Here we have 002 Glitz. This peach leaning highlighter, amazing. So you can see the consistency in terms of the formula. I will say that Glitz was the Backstage palette that introduced a little more of a duochrome finish. So you see there's a little more texture here, and I picked up from this pan. It might be hard to see on camera, but I think the particles are a little bigger and you have more of an opalescent finish. And I think that was the more dominant formula in the 3 that followed. There was the pink, the gold, or I should say the rose gold, the copper gold, and the gold gold. The gold gold was definitely more yellow leaning overall. This is the copper gold. And again, you can see a little bit of that texture. It's a little more translucent, right? So it's going to serve as more of a highlighter veil of reflectivity, much like there is in the Forever lineup, like a ice blue, like super shiny sparkly. Like that one has the most reflectivity out of all the Forever shades, but it does have like that blue flip. Kind of think of Astral Blue. Is it Astral? The Astral Blue shade something from Pat McGrath's Subliminal. it's doing that. So this texture is delivering a little bit of that experience here, where you can place this over another shade, right? I'm mixing these two together, whoa. And when the light hits, it's going to just have a more brightening effect. It will have a little more twinkle to the skin, not much of a prominent base like you see here from not only the Forever shades, the Luminizer shade, or even the other Backstage shades, which have more like a pearl sheen finish. The 3 compacts with the more curated like copper golds and rose golds in here, you're going to experience a little more, just a little more texture because of that higher shine. I think I don't want, it's not a molecule, but I guess on a cellular level it is. Those particles, I think, bigger. Like for instance, you will find here in the rose gold, this is going to have a lot more color. Yeah, but you see it's a lot more veil-like in finish versus what you see here in 001 Universal. So I just wanted to make those brief comparisons. In the end, like I said, despite the different undertones and finishes, you know, pearl versus more shiny, glittery. Not that these are glittery, but hard to tell, right? Whether I have on coral glow, or if I have on rose gold, or I have on golden glow. I mean, they all pretty much look the same when they're all placed on the face. I was seduced more by the Dior formula over Charlotte's because I do think from her most recent release, her Bar of Gold palette, I adore. That is a great formula. I'm not crazy about the current one she has out, but as I explained, because she has more shades, more people can partake in Charlotte's highlighter fun, right? Because previously her highlighter selection was limited, and I would say even before that, Dior had a lot more highlighter choices in not only, I think in the Luminizer lineup as well. I only bought 03, but if I recall, there might have been like a bronze or a warm gold option. And then with the Backstage palettes, where you have 4 pans in one palette, sure, the palette construction itself is all plastic and not as luxurious feeling, but you got more options to play with. Just for one face, you could play with pinkier tones lower, icier tones higher, and just have a little more fun with layering your highlighters and experimenting in that way. And when the 3 compacts came with the true gold, rose gold, and the copper gold, those were a lot of fun because you could really challenge what you can put on your actual cheeks. Since these have more color, for instance, I can place this shade lower on my cheeks. Now you gotta be careful because you're playing with a little more texture here. So wet your face first, maybe use a sponge. I don't like sponges, but you might want to try with that, you know, because these formulas with the particles having more reflectivity, I think tend to run a little drier. So I think advantageous when dealing with these types of formulas to spritz your face first to increase your skin's moisture so there's more adherence for the powder and it won't look flaky and uneven. So if I were to do that quickly, I got my little refer sponge. Technically, I should have washed this. I did not wash this. This is why I don't like sponges. This is Makeup Forever's Mist and Fix. It will be better if I wet this because it wouldn't be as dense. But if I just place this lightly here, where I have a little more texture on the cheeks, the moisture is going to help melt the powders into the skin, will eliminate any borders, any harsh lines, and you can see just how, whoa, okay, now we're shiny. So those were the standout highlighter comparisons. Let's go to the actual eyeshadow palette, which I also use for blush. Okay, I applied this shade on the higher points of my cheeks, but I also have a demo here showing not only this terracotta shade, but the shade that lies beneath, this more like reddish brown mahogany shade. And keep in mind, these are eyeshadows, which means they're a little more pigmented than a blush would be. So just go in with an appropriate brush, one that is fluffy, long bristled, not dense. So for example, I would not use my Chico Horo Takumi but I will use my Sonia G, right? You see the difference here. A shorter bristle, more dense construction will pick up more product. Longer bristle, not as dense, will pick up less. So you have a little more control there on the application. I applied this pink color lower on the cheekbones with the more terracotta shade. And over here, you have a mixture of like satin and pearl. So let's get into these colors here, right? The shiniest out of all in the palette. So you have like that more icier champagne and the more pink leaning kind of, I don't know how to identify that color. It's like a peach. Then you have this peach satin and more of like a medium pink satin. So you see these, which are right next to the ones I first swatched, don't have as much shine. They're more satin leaning. So the most shine you'll get will be from these colors, a little more subdued from the ones over. And this shade here is actually, you know, is not the most show-stopping shade. So this is the weakest shade out of the entire palette. It's more of like an opalescent type of a gig. The color itself will provide highlighting purposes, not so much from the effect itself, right? And then moving over to its neighboring shade, this like kind of reminds me of Coral Glow. It's definitely more coral leaning, a little more coral orange. That's going to be really pretty on the eyes. And now going into the top pink shade and the more like maroon leaning. But look at that. Ooh. Ooh, my goodness. I'm telling you.
You'll need to continue on your...
Siri, stop talking to me. It always, like these colors, man, not only on the eyes, but on the cheeks. Again, you got to pick the right tool to get the appropriate distribution and intensity, because it could be a lot. All right, just warning you. And here we go. These are the shades that just drew me in. Said, I need to get this right now. Here is like that, oh, that clay terracotta shade and this reddish mahogany brown. Here we go. All the shades from the Diorshow 10 color palette. You might think, wow, really simple, but we're gonna get into this demo. You're gonna see these in action and you might change your mind. That's enough. Let's prep these eyes. I'm using Danessa's Color Fix primer. Just very easy to slap on the lids. Now in the demo, I applied the terracotta shade on one side and I use the more mahogany leaning shade on the outer lid, played with the different shimmers in the palette, and the end result, as you can see, super toasty on the eyes, and the way it coincides with the blush, because I did purposefully apply it higher on the temples, because that is, I think, is a trend or something on TikTok where you purposefully swirl and twirl the blush here higher around the brow, so it kind of creates that beautiful bracket of color. And this is a perfect palette to do that with because of the hues included. Today's demo, I wanted to highlight more of the pink shades because woo, these are so lovely. But again, you got to be careful. Fluffy brush time, fluffy brush time. Going in with Sonia's classic, yes, classic crease. Dipping into this pink shade first, and already, I'm telling you, just look how much color we got on there already, my goodness. So this, very monochromatic, you know, if you wanted to go that route, where the same color you place on the eyes will be the same color you place on the cheeks. If I wanted to do that swirl and twirl method, I'm taking my Toncedo AQ20 and just whipping that color softly here, higher on the cheeks and around the brow to create that really nice bracket. And I purposefully used a soft red squirrel brush because I didn't want to disrupt my brows too much, which I kind of did anyway. So ideally you would do this before your brow. So you really go ham on that swirl and twirl technique, you know, to get a little extra color there. But you see how much color caught like in my hairline from using this shade is because you really got to work it in. You got to work it in high into the hairs, which is why important when washing your face, you get into this region to ensure that everything is gone. It is clean. Now into this shade. This is the more, I don't want to say magenta. It has like a more muted feel to it versus the more pink leaning shade. Hello, can you stay in frame? Shade we have on the other side. Still lovely though. One I would probably place higher on the cheeks. I would use this as like a blush sculpt, right? It almost has like a wine undertone to it. Oh, that's pretty. I'm gonna stay consistent. Do the pink shade here on the lower lash line and then the more muted magenta here on this lower lash line. We could go either way. We could try this shade, which is not gonna have as much shine. So you see, it's definitely more of a satin finish, right? So if you don't want that pearl finish, then these shades will give you that effect. However, if you want more, a little bit of pearl sheen, you're gonna get it from the bigger pans here. So I'm placing that color on this eye. Probably is hard to tell, but you know what? You could also use these as highlighters, which is what I like to do. Just, you know, bring it all together so you can see this color in action. And basically, you know, again, it's more like an opalescent finish. So there is a very light pink flip to the shade, but the shade itself is what's providing the highlight effect, less about any shine it has in the formula. I want to go in with this shade. Ooh, that's pretty. This is more coral leaning, but I think creates a beautiful gradient, right? Don't mind me. I'm going in more with the pink. There's a little bit of like highlight something on my classic crease. I don't exactly know what, but it's fine. I'm gonna whip a little more shadow there. And on this side, let's just keep it the same. I'm gonna place that here on the inner corner. And why not? You know what? I'm gonna take the mahogany shade here and use this as an outer corner intensifier. You might not make a distinction between the two shades, but I do feel this creates lovely smoke, especially paired with that muted magenta shade. And then of course want to bring it out a little bit to create that woof effect. So technical. I do want a little more. What can we use? Let's see here. I'm picking up this shade, which is more peach leaning. I'm placing that on the majority of the lid, carving that out slightly. Yes. Ooh, that's pretty. I do want to place a little more blush just so you can see the color. So if I wanted to go in with this shade, again, using my soft cheek, but I'm even tapping some here because look already, my gosh. So placing it higher into the hollows, bringing it over the brow. So it, I think, just pairs well with what we got going on in the eyes. I have so much highlighter on, but I kind of love it. And we can try to see, because since this is more satin, we can see what this does lower. Oh yes, it's gonna have shine, 100%, but keep in mind, if you want a little bit of a satin finish and you do like some shine on the cheeks, then why not, right? So maybe not advantageous for you to use on the eyes if you want to have something more reflective there, but the satin finish for this eyeshadow I think works well on the cheeks. It's time for mascara. So my apologies that I'm not doing more demos than this, because I did include the B-roll of me applying that terracotta shade, as well as the demo that I did in my January faves, where I use that terracotta shade with bronze bijou. And you can see if you pair it with something more gold leaning, the orangey undertone of that shade is gonna come forward. Ooh, we're looking toasty. Listen, I'm not one to run to luxury makeup, but when I saw this compact, I was like, are you kidding me? What are you doing to me? And then the colors inside, the versatility of the formula, the shades, it was a wrap. It was a wrap. And although this released over winter, my goodness, it is a killer summer palette. I just think the hues in here make for a perfect opportunity to create like that toasty look on the skin, especially if you go monochromatic. 100%. The same shades you apply on your cheeks, you apply on the eyes, you wrap it all in by placing the blush higher. Ooh, and you don't even need to apply mascara. I think that's a beautiful look also, just relying on the colors themselves on eyes and cheeks. Sans mascara could be a look. Ooh, what should we put on the lips? Well, right now I have the Suku lip gloss on. I really love what that's doing, but we're gonna do something else. Just so you know, I have the light on, I'm in front of my window. It's taking away a little bit of the color. If you were to see me in person right now, oh my God. The pinks and the shine, I mean, I look flushed and I'm mad at it. I think I'm gonna do finesse. It's just, exactly. Finesse with a little bit of Dansante from Dior's Rouge Allure. Is it Rouge Allure? Am I making stuff up? Rouge Dior, excuse me. This is a lighter beige, but I'm gonna hit the center of my lip with it. So here is the final look using the Diorshow 10 color palette, as well as several highlighters, and applying the eyeshadows on my cheeks as blush. Hopefully you can see the gradient of color. I know it's tough with the lighting, but I wanted you to also take note of the texture. I applied a lot of highlighter on my face, but it does help when applying so many highlighters that you use a setting spray just to help with the adherence, melting the powders into the skin so they don't look as dry, right, when blended out when it's all said and done. And other thing to know about the Diorshow is that it doesn't have fragrance. I said this in my monthly favorites video. I was expecting to take a hit, okay, but was surprised to discover that it is fragrance free. I mean, I sniffed the heck out of this. There's no fragrance. And it is made in France, okay? The highlighters do have fragrance, the Forever, the Luminizer, but the Backstage ones do not. So that is the advantage. I've been using this palette ever since I purchased it. Again, I just really love the seamless nature of it, where you could use one palette for both eyes and cheeks. And sure, you might have to proceed with caution when using these shades on your cheeks, because as you see, they pack a punch, and if you choose a thick brush, it's going to look very robust on the cheeks and not as smooth. So that's why I would recommend that you choose just a medium, as much as I would go, density brush with a longer bristle, just so that color can whip around your skin easier. You could try that method where you place the blush higher here around the eyes to create those blush brackets, and I think that's a beautiful look, especially if you whip the blush into your crease, right? So while you're taking it around higher around the temples, you could get in there and naturally that color will just fall into that region and overall will create like that seamless look from eyes to cheekbones. Definitely let me know if you have this palette, how you've been liking it, if you've been eyeing it, if it's a total pass for you. This was an indulging purchase on my part. Definitely did not need it, but again, you know, something about the shades, man. These right here is like, forget it. If that's included, sign me up. I'll work with whatever comes along, okay? I'll work with it. And I'm happy to say the other shades and textures included in this palette, alongside the faves, has been working out beautifully well. I hope the highlighter comparisons helped as well. Let me know if you have any of them. The Dior Forever, the Dior Luminizer, so many Eisers, the Backstage palettes. What do you think of them? Making comparisons down below. I'll see you down in those comments, fam. And until then, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up or maybe consider subscribing to my channel. And until then, I will see you on here again with another review tutorial, Dior extravaganza, or maybe a Chanel stash video because I got a few faves from that brand as well. Take care, and I will see you again soon.